Welcome everybody to another OBA Bar Talk virtual chat. I'm Dave Summers, Executive Director of the Omaha Bar Association. Here I am in a courtroom in somewhere USA. No, that's actually just a green screen behind me. I have the pleasure today of speaking with two county court judges, Judge Keim and Judge Hansen, who have agreed to speak with me about what's going on in the courts. Thank you, Your Honors, for joining me.
Thanks for asking us.
Now, I just wanted to sort of get a sense how things are going right now in the courtroom and in the courthouse, because there's still some restrictions in place. And so what's it like for those who aren't going to court or having hearings on a regular basis?
You know, we are allowing people into the courthouse more so than we did, this time last week or the week before last. So it's still trying to have certain types of hearings while maintaining that social distancing within the confines of the courtroom itself. So in between litigants who are in the gallery waiting for their cases to be called, with the attorneys who typically are just kind of milling around in the well and things like that, trying to encourage social distancing within the confines of the courtroom, having people wear masks while they're inside the courtroom. What happens outside of the courtroom obviously is, beyond our control, but, trying to kind of institute some of those CDC guidelines to protect litigants and lawyers and court staff, because like you said before, we're at the beginning of something still. Everybody I think is trying to navigate their way through it the best way that they can. And it's new uncharted territory for everyone. So. Absolutely.
And I think sometimes maybe lawyers, legal professionals, we get a sense that, if something's not exactly the same as it used to be, if it's if there's a different situation going on, that it's unfair, and there's something that can be appealed and things like that. But we're all dealing with the situation, and we have to sort of just be okay with things not being the same. Having to wear masks, maybe you can't have the same facial expressions. Communication becomes an issue. Court records become an issue, and we all really have to just be understanding and do our best going through this, right?
No, I agree. I think everybody kind of has to be amenable and flexible.
Absolutely. Are there any situations that you've had to deal with? Some bad apples in your courtroom that you've had to lay down the law and just say, listen, you can't be like that, attorneys or even just litigants coming in?
Well, I personally have not been in the courthouse. So I am the only county court judge who's not physically there today, or actually for quite some time. But we had a schedule essentially for the end of March and the majority of April, where it was 6 judges on, 6 judges off. So there were 6 judges in the courthouse, 1 week on, 1 week off, essentially. So there were judges on the bench every single day, somewhere doing something this entire time. As of May 1st, we went back to a full staff. So you have everybody there all the time, with the exception of I'm the only one who's not. It's interesting because as far as county court goes, I've been forced to do things remotely. But, and for a time we didn't, like restitution hearings, for example, eviction hearings are on hold. But small claims trials have been going on this entire time. We continued a lot of things, civil cases and criminal cases and things like that, trials mostly, eviction hearings and things like that. But now we're having small claim trials again. Now courtroom 20, which is the eviction courtroom, is up and running again. And in the event, I know that Judge Lohaus communicated to members of the civil bar through administrative orders and sometimes even more informally about, in the event that they needed an expedited hearing for a eviction restitution case, they could file a motion and a proposed order with her. And so those are still being, some of them are still being held in courtroom 20. The jail we're doing arraignments and bond settings at the jail and have been doing them. I think literally there may have been one day, maybe at the very beginning when we're trying to get the WebEx technology set up and things like that. I think there might've been maybe literally one day that bond settings and arraignments were not held, but they've been held every single day, throughout this entire process. And there's a system in place where the whole idea is to decrease the traffic within the courthouse. So, in the event that somebody wanted to enter a plea, and, they happen to be at the jail, or they requested a bond review, or they wanted to waive their prelim, basically non-evidentiary type hearings, and the party requesting the hearing is in custody, it's at 10 or 10:30?
10.
10. So it's basically 10 o'clock
11.
every day. 11. It's Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So that way, the defendant can appear remotely from corrections the same way that they appear for a bond setting or, an arraignment.
So in the discussion about evictions, as I understand it from 2 days ago, the governor said he's not going to extend the moratorium on evictions. So it looks like June 1st is the day, right? That's when, if you haven't paid rent from the previous months, that's when the process can start for evictions. Now, is there something that the practicing bar can do at this point to maybe work towards better outcomes than having a lot of people evicted? Is there work that can be done by the bar for those tenants in situations where they may be out of a job, or they may be behind on the rent because of furloughs and things like that you could maybe just suggest in general, getting ahead of the game a little bit here?
Well, I think that anything that practitioners can do to be prepared, more prepared than ever when they're coming into the courtroom. So if you're ready to file something, then you're ready to do the trial. You've already made contact with the other side. You already have whatever your marching orders are from your client, so that you know what you can or can't offer, what you are or aren't willing to accept. And really just being prepared that when you come in, that we're going to have a trial, figure out what steps need to be taken. Or by contrast, if you've talked to the person in the hallway, you know that you're not going to have a trial. There's been something worked out, and we're always willing to put a stipulation on the record that if they make this payment plan by this date, then restitution won't issue and the case would be dismissed, or what have you. We're more than happy to take those stipulations, but those need to be hammered out before we approach the bench. And really that's a good practice anytime. But right now, like Judge Keim said, we're really trying to limit how much we're in contact with one another. And so by doing some of that homework ahead of time, then it limits how much time we're together in front of the bench. So that's really helpful.
Absolutely. Now, we talked about the bench bar conference in the past about the schedule of, you have a criminal month, right, where you're doing criminal trials and things like that. Has that sort of schedule changed a bit over this time?
Well, as of right now, the first time that any jurors are being summoned is July. So all of the jury trials that were either previously scheduled, in April, May, and June have gotten moved or postponed, or new pretrial dates. and this is civil and criminal. So I think the jury cases are going to pose a whole different set of, issues that everybody is going to have to deal with, because, there's going to be, and we're anticipating a low yield from the juror summonses, and, a lot of people literally being afraid to come down. And so, from the front end, it's the lack of jurors, lack of people who are willing to come down. And then you have, when they do come down, how do you do that? How do you socially distance people during, the jury selection process in the courtroom, but also in the legislative chambers where we have all the jurors actually come and report. There have been some discussions, at least preliminarily in county court, about things like restitution hearings, and basically everything that occurs over in courtroom 20, because all of those cases that were set for trial, and all of those replevins and garnishee liabilities and all of those sorts of things, those didn't go away. They just kind of got moved. So everything that, if you're a practitioner and you had a case that was previously scheduled, let's say during the month of April, it's now scheduled for the first week or two of June. But then there's also going to be a large number of cases that are going to be filed now that will also be held at that same time. So there's been discussions about splitting up hearings. So in other words, maybe we haven't quite figured this out yet, but maybe A through K will be in courtroom 20, and then J through Z will be in courtroom 22 down the hallway, discussion about maybe staggering, so everything's not at 9 a.m. Maybe certain hearings will be at 9 a.m. Maybe certain hearings will be at 10 a.m. And having judges run multiple courtrooms on the civil side, whether it's for small claims that's typically held at 10:30, or the docket that's typically held at 9 a.m. in courtroom 20, splitting those up so you have 4 courtrooms going simultaneously or 3 courtrooms going simultaneously, so that you can maintain the social distancing, so that you don't have, a bazillion people either in the hallway or in the courtroom at the same time, Preliminary hearings right now, we've split those up as well. So there's a preliminary hearing calendar at 9 a.m. And then there's another portion of the calendar or the alphabet or whatever is being held at 1:30 for that exact reason. And that's been working out pretty well. Judge Hansen, what do you think?
I think it's been working out well. Judge Huber and I have been doing the small claims cases in the month of May together. So we're running 2 courtrooms with that. It's been very efficient. We're able to have people easily sit 6 feet apart, bring them in keep them in the hallway, where right now we don't have a lot of people waiting in that hallway at 10:30. So keeping people apart, bringing them in as they pair up, or if the other side doesn't show up, bringing them in, giving them their hearing, and then getting them on their way, so that we don't have a bunch of people in the courtroom. And running 2 courtrooms has worked really slick this month. So we've had good success with the things that we have been trying, and we appreciate the flexibility of the people who are the litigants, as well as people who are lawyers, in rearranging their schedules and understanding that what we usually do at 9, sometimes now we're going to have to do at 1:30, but people have been very open and flexible, understanding that we're doing this for the greater good and for the health of us all.
And I'm sitting here, and this would probably be something for the chief judge of county court to comment on. Probably wouldn't even get a comment there, but perhaps there needs to be some of that CARES Act money to the county being spent for some increased staff needs over this period of time to deal with the juror situation with increased volume in some areas, and just all this. I know that you guys are strapped as it is with not having as much help as the district court has for staff per judge. And I guess I'm just going to go out there and say, it sounds like there needs to be some support given monetarily to to maybe bump up the staff right now to help with all these things, because as you guys are already, it's a tough situation. So that's just me lobbying on your behalf here on the
We
virtual
appreciate
chat.
it.
Thank you. The weird thing about county court employees is our staff is actually they're state employees, not county.
Oh, well, that's great, because the state got most of the money from the CARES Act, right?
Yeah, so that's what's strange about it, is that, depending on what court system you're talking about, whether it's juvenile court, district court, or county court, it's certain people are county employees, certain people are employees of the state, certain people are salary, certain people are hourly. So there's there's a whole litany of things that go into us trying to ask for money. But I think, Judge Hansen made a good point as far as since the traffic in the courthouse as of right now and the type of hearings that are being held right now are a lot less. It's been a good time for us to take things for a test drive, and figure out, does it work? Does it not work? And as she indicated, there's some things that are pretty slick. I mean, it's worked out pretty well. And so those are the things that, we're going to be using going forward, because again, this isn't something that will likely be alleviated by July 1st or August 1st, so we have to take some of the lessons learned and build on that.
Absolutely. Well, and when we're looking ahead and down the way, is there something that you really want the attorneys to know about right now, that it's not getting across? They're coming in and they aren't understanding that, something that you're looking for from them. Is it a not embracing of technology? Is there anything that really, we need to get out there to the practicing bar that we haven't discussed already?
Judge Hansen?
There's not something that I can think of right off the top of my head. The majority of the people that we're dealing with in county court, it's prosecutors, public defenders. There's a certain group of people that do a lot of the civil things that we're used to them. And the lion's share of them have been very good about assimilating to the new rules and assimilating to our test drives, as Judge Keim said, and giving us some feedback and some grace when things work not so well, and giving us the feedback when things do work well. So I think continuing to just be respectful, don't get too frustrated with us. Give us the feedback, whether it's positive or negative, what's working well, what's not working. If you have some suggestions, I think that, we're all trying to figure this out together. I personally feel like I have had more trials this month than I normally have, because the things that are going to trial it seems like they're an emergency, or people really are wanting to have their day in court. So again, being really prepared, understanding where your exhibits are, what you need to prove, so that we can be as expeditious as we can with that court process. But overall, I think people have done a pretty good job with those things, and just continue to come to court, make sure you're wearing your mask and practicing the best social distancing that you can. Be a good example to your own clients that while nobody likes to have their mouth and nose covered, especially when you're trying to make an argument, it is the best way to keep everyone healthy in the courtroom. And, just being a good example.
It's something, and I'm a sucker for things advertised on Instagram, and call me a millennial, I guess, but I've seen in Asia now a new face mask that they're putting into place is just a plastic screen. And I don't know about the acoustics coming through the plastic, but certainly, being able to see the whole face. I guess we'll see what happens with our different masks and how they evolve.
It is kind of hard to hear through the fabric mask, and it gets a little hot when you're doing the rights advisement or putting someone on probation. But again, it's, you know, maybe that's one of those great ideas, is to just get the sort of the sneeze shield, if you will, for all of us.
Well, and the miking up that has happened in Sarpy County, right?
Oh, I don't know about that.
The Stephanie Martinez, I think, has instituted that in her court.
Okay.
Maybe
Yeah, it's
not
like
in
you
a,
have a little headgear.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
maybe not instead of having the court reporter there, because there may still be some muffling and some need for for interpretation of what was said. But you know, there may be needs for some more AV help in those situations too. Were those dachshunds on your
Yes.
mask there? Okay.
Yes. They're my wiener dogs. You know, I think that actually that points out one of the other things that is different, is unique, at least about Douglas County Court, is we have such a high volume, and a lot of the people that we serve aren't necessarily represented. So it's hard to institute some of the things that work really well in district court, because you're able to communicate with the advocates more, and the attorneys can help their clients get the headphones on or what have you. But when you have the people coming off the street and you've got 100 of them to arraign, you can't just put a headphone set on everybody. So it does create more of a logistical issue for us to get the people in and out, and which is one of the reasons we're using the rotunda as a staging area for some of the arraignment courtrooms, to keep people distanced, since we really don't have enough seats for everyone anyway. And this way they're not sardine canned in there. But that is one of the differences between county court and district court, is the volume is much different. And
Well, yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. But yeah, I mean, you know, setting up telephonic hearings and setting up WebEx hearings is very easy to do when both parties are represented by counsel. Not exactly easy to do when you don't have, you know, a way to, you know, how do you contact a self-represented litigant about their traffic arraignment to appear via WebEx? I mean, realistically, you know, and the same thing goes, you know, on the civil side, you know, so, you know, having, you know, throwing the self-represented litigant into the equation creates, you know, some other obstacles and some other challenges that we're dealing with, because, you know, you need to be able to notify people of court dates and times, and any changes that may occur. And, you know, that doesn't, like I said, that doesn't even address the, you know, telephonic WebEx sort of a situation. So.
Absolutely. Yeah. The self-represented litigants crush that you deal with on a day-to-day basis, that is certainly unique to Douglas County over the rest of the state. I mean, the numbers, and we've talked about this in the past, just the numbers in volume in the past that the court was dealing with. You know, can you throw that out there again? Just how much volume you're dealing with on a yearly basis?
Well, I'm trying to think. I want to say it's about 25,000, 30,000 civil cases. Does that sound about right, Judge Hansen?
excuse me. Yes, I think that does sound about right.
Okay, so that's civil. Criminal, when you talk about, you know, if you're going to be including
Traffic tickets
and things like that, I think it's about 80,000. I mean, all in all, it's about 100,000, and that doesn't count the probate stuff. You know,
this is done without a bailiff, without a full-time assistant helping you. Wow.
Right. Well, but you know, honestly, I think that's another difference that dealing with in the district court, county court, or, you know, juvenile court, county court, how we're different. All of the proceedings are digitally recorded. So when you have a court reporter, the court reporter could be sitting, you know, at home like I am, and you could have the judge, you know, in a different location, and then you could have the litigants at a third location. Because everything we have is digitally recorded, I know Judge Martinez had some sort of a situation where her court reporter was doing digital recording from her home. I don't know exactly like the logistics of that. But what I can tell you is that we don't have the capability to do that for one judge, let alone 12.
Yeah.
You know, so somebody has to be in the courtroom at all times to make sure that there's an accurate record. And for example, when bond settings and arraignments are being done, the judge and what we call our bailiff, but you know, the person who's in charge of the justice entries and the digital recording, they're the two parties that are in the courtroom. And for a period of time, correct me if I'm wrong, Judge Hansen, the prosecutors were appearing and the public defenders and defense counsel were appearing essentially from their office or in the alternative remotely. But now it's a situation where everybody is physically in the courtroom with the exception of the inmate.
Mm-hmm. And that's incredibly important. As we talk about how much we can do over Zoom and everything like that, there is just something to being in the same space, and what transpires from that, how much more important that can be than to do it over Zoom. And so maybe people are asking, well, why can't we just have jurors, via WebEx? And it's not fair to the people on trial necessarily if they're not in the space and seeing that, in the same room as them instead of on a screen, right? So.
Well, and I think that's something important to consider, that, the parties have to agree to appearing telephonically or appearing via video conference. I mean, it has to be by agreement of the parties. And if one side does not agree for whatever reason, then, it's how are you going to do that? And like you said, there is something to everybody being in the same room. Part of the court's job is for evidentiary hearings, for example, part of the court's job is to, weigh the evidence. And part of that is the credibility of the witnesses. And that's hard to do sometimes via WebEx. We're not doing evidentiary hearings via WebEx. I know there are other jurisdictions that have done that. But again, whether you decide to do them or not, everybody has to agree to that. And that was, one of the considerations about preliminary hearings. They were continued for a period of time, but you can't continue things infinitum. People have the right to have their day in court, they're entitled to that. And so we have to figure it out. We can't just, put our head in the sand, punt, and hope for a good roll. I mean, whatever you want to say, we have to figure out a way to keep the ball rolling, to keep court accessible, to have people resolve their cases one way or the other. I mean, we have to. So.
Well, and at some point, the more we kick the can down the road, the greater the spill once the dam breaks. And the public defender's office and the city prosecutor and the county attorney have worked well together, trying to resolve things ahead of time, resolve things by a plea by waiver so that it can help people who are self-represented. All right, if we're going to offer you a fine, go ahead, and if you want to accept that, send back in this waiver and we'll take care of it that way. So they've done a great job trying to reduce our traffic as well. And it's hard to reduce that traffic, but they've done a great job doing that.
Gosh, yeah. This has been a heavy conversation, I have to say. Are there any lighthearted doozy stories from this that you want to throw out there to make it a little bit more lighthearted than we've been talking about? Is there anything funny going on at the courthouse, or that you've seen from people online as they're going through this?
No, I would just like to remind people that when you do things via WebEx, it's all recorded. So, I mean, obviously there's always a verbal record being taken in one way or another. But WebEx hearings are also, there's video evidence of what's in your background, for example, and like, what you're wearing. So, and it's not, and that's the thing. It's like, it won't be a question as to whether like, oh no, that didn't happen. I didn't appear in my bathrobe. It's like, no, you did. And there's a, right. Yeah. And there's a video, there's evidence of that. So I don't know. I mean,
We have had a couple of those.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
Yeah.
Tank tops, bathrobes, all kinds of stuff. The way that I think of it is when you're doing any sort of a, whether it's a Zoom meeting or, because we've had a bunch, I mean, there's been a lot of CLE kinds of things, that are via Zoom and things like that. And so people need to be you need to remember, you need to mute yourself sometimes, or realize that, maybe you should just go off video for a minute for whatever reason. But again, that's something, you're asking people to all of a sudden be forced into this digital age, maybe when they're not 100% accustomed to it. And I don't know. I just think that kind of stuff is funny because I think of it like as a clothing version or a fashion version of like a mullet, right? Business in front, party in the back. So it's like business, whatever, I mean, if you want to wear nothing, if you want to wear flip flops, I mean, whatever, but like here, business, whatever else, who cares? And recognize like what's behind you. So if you want to, I mean, I have, some virtual backgrounds and things like that. But I mean, if you're not going to use a virtual background, recognize that people can see like what's on your bookcase behind you.
What snacks you've got out.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
What you've been drinking this
you
week.
have a closet door open and there's like, stuff hanging from the rafters. It's like, okay, but remember, it's like everybody can see you all the time.
Right. It's not just what you're wearing. It's not just, or what they can see what you're wearing. It's what's behind you that you're essentially wearing as your credibility. That's good. Yeah. Well, and before we got going on this, I commented on, you both have better quality cameras than I do. My webcam is a bit pixelated compared to what you're using. And so I know that, the latest and greatest Apple products seem to do really well for picture quality. And I think that is something too. At the same time, it may also be what camera you're using. So, little tip there for sure.
Well, I think, for example, with doing like WebEx stuff, like I've been doing, I've taken every type of IT thing that I own for a test drive to see what works best. So, it's like my personal laptop, I tried it that way. Then did it on my work laptop, did it that way. Then I did it on an iPad, and then I did it on my phone. And I'm on my phone right now, and my phone is 20 times better than any of the three things I just said. And
Me
so
too.
I think that's, I don't know why that is, but that's, how it works. So I think that's another thing, if you have a bandwidth problem, if you're at home with your children and, they're on, they're playing video games or they're on their iPad or they're on their phone and stuff, that's eating up, a lot of your bandwidth. So, you are going to be pixelated. You're going to cut out, those sorts of things. And some people's houses have better cell or, reception than others,
Yeah. For an extra $20 a month, get the higher.
Well, that's, that's just it. You might have to pay the upgrade to get like the, whatever NASA type, stuff, just because.
Absolutely. Yeah. And well, if you're ready for your hearing with everything except for a strong signal and, cuts out halfway through, that's incredibly detrimental.
Sure.
Even if it's having good Wi-Fi and having a cell reception, for backup, and have a cell repeater if you need to, if you're a bad reception area, like my neighborhood, have those options ready. Oh, are you on the Millennium Falcon right there?
Yes.
That's awesome. That's hilarious.
Not the Death Star. You're with the Resistance.
No, this is the Millennium Falcon. So, but I mean, of course, like if I'm in court, I'm not gonna do this, right? Okay, but you know, you have, I have one in that actually Judge Hansen sent me. She took a picture of the courtroom in courtroom 32. So that's, you know, one of the backgrounds, virtual backgrounds. I mean, that one you have is pretty cool too, with the courthouse and stuff. But, you know, again, it's just, think about it. I mean, I'm not going to be in the Millennium Falcon in the middle of court, but I mean, you know.
And maybe it helps, you know, the self-represented litigants, you know, believe you more, or maybe heed your advice if you're going to give them some, you know, some leniency and some advice on be better going forward if you're looking like you're in a courtroom instead of the Millennium Falcon. So yeah.
Well, sure. I mean, yeah.
I think one of the things that we can look at for the future is, as we get more comfortable with technology, how can we allow the self-represented litigants or other people to appear via technology? Like, is that using our public libraries and having a stationary place where people can come and they can log in, and we have a queue where people can appear through the Elkhorn Library or the Millard Library or something like that, so that not only does it help in a time of COVID, but it might also help some of the folks that have transportation issues or daycare issues, what have you. But, you know, just finding some other locations, because it is somewhat of a challenge for people to come, you know, from this large county, coming from Waterloo, coming from Elkhorn, wherever, and then finding a place to park and finding the right courtroom in the building if you haven't been in here. So maybe by this experiment through COVID, maybe we end up in the future having some other options that we can better serve the public as well. So, you know, through some of the bad sometimes comes some really good ideas too in the future. So hopefully we can manage to learn some lessons through this period of time and better serve everyone in the future.
Absolutely.
Well, I think it's important too, you know, I mean, a lot of businesses are doing kind of like a, you know, just like a rolling list, you know, of kind of like what works and what doesn't work. And because, you know, I mean, it seems like, you know, depending on the day, it seems like we've been doing this for the past 3 years. And then other days, it seems like, you know, we've been doing it for 3 minutes. So, but you forget a lot of different things. So we're internally among the judges keeping sort of a little running list of, you know, things that we just maybe happened upon that were really, really great. And then other things that maybe we thought were going to work out really well that didn't, and why, you know? So, I mean, having some, like Judge Hansen said, you know, some level of positive takeaway from this so that we can build on it going forward. And sometimes, you know, when you're forced to do things in a different way, you know, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes, you know, something positive can come out of it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Fingers crossed. Well, I don't want to take any more of your time. I think I promised 20, 30 minutes and it's been well past that.
Thanks for having
us.
Thank you so much. Apologies for the technology problems at the beginning. But thank you. I will edit this together and put it out there tomorrow.
Good filters. You have good filters for us.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thanks so much. You guys have a great day and have a great weekend.
Thank you.
Yep. Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.